A study of 51 hospital employees who were diagnosed with allergy from exposure to powder on gloves found that the number of gloves used per week is by the sample workers summarized as follows. Okay, let sigma square represents the variance. Consider this hypothesis test sigma square equals 100 against sigma square not equal to 100. Give the rejection region for the test at a significance level of 0.01. So the rejection region is the critical region, and for that we need the critical values. And for critical values, we use one of the three calculators. And in this case, since the test is about variance, whenever the test is about variance or standard deviation, you use the chi-square calculator for the critical values. So let's see if we have a stat crunch open. Somehow there is no stat crunch open. Let's open it from the previous problem. Okay, so stats calculator chi-square. All right, now let's go back to this. So it's a two-tailed test. So in this one, you know that you use a between and you do 1 minus alpha in the area. So 1 minus 0.01 is 0.99. And then degrees of freedom is 1 minus the sample size. Sample size is 51, so degrees of freedom will be 50. Okay, so the critical values are 27.99 and 79.49. So the in-between region is not the rejection region. For a two-tailed test, the in-between region is where you do not reject. So you reject if you are either less than the lower critical value or higher than the upper critical value. That's when you will reject. And the test statistic will be done through the variance stats because the hypothesis test is about variances. So stats, variance stats, one sample with stats, variance stats, one sample summary. And sample variance, okay, will be the square of the standard deviation, so 11.1 square. Now, I don't know what 11.1 square is, so I'll just write 11.1 power 2. And the sample size is 51 in this case. Oh, hypothesis test, I didn't. Okay, so sigma square is 100. So this time we already are given sigma square, so you don't square it. So you just keep the 100 and then it was not equals to. So the test statistic is 61.605. Okay. So now let's see if it's in between the two critical values. If it is, then you do not reject. So 61.605 is actually in between the 27 and the 79. So then you do not reject. Do not reject, and when you do not reject, there is insufficient evidence. So this is the one, do not reject, and there is insufficient evidence. Okay. What are the correct hypotheses? All right, the diameter, the piston diameter of a certain hand pump is 0.5 inch. The manager determines that diameters are normal with a mean of 0.5 inch and standard deviation of 0.03 inch. After calibrating the machine, the manager selects 29 pistons and determines that the standard deviation is 0.0026. Is there significant evidence to conclude that the standard deviation has decreased? So the null is that it is equal to 0.0026, the standard deviation, because that's what you are investigating, because you're asking, is there evidence for the manager to conclude that the standard deviation has decreased? So that tells you that the hypothesis test is about standard deviation. Null always has equals and 0.0026. And the alternative, you're testing whether it has decreased. So standard deviation less than 0.0026. Oh, the 0.0026 is for the sample. So in this case, you don't put the sample value here. You put the other default values, determines that the mean 0.5 and the standard deviation 0.003. So it's 0.003. Right? Remember, in the hypothesis test, you never put the sample values. You put any other default values, or sometimes they will say population explicitly. Sometimes they will not say it, but then any other value that is sitting is by default the population value. Okay. Calculate the value of the test statistic. So the hypothesis test is for standard deviation. So you will use variance stats for the test statistic. Stats, variance stats, one sample. Stats, variance stats, one sample with summary. So sample variance. So they give us that for the 29, the standard deviation was 0.0026. So the square of that would be the sample variance. So I'll just write 0.0026 caret 2. And the size is the 29 pistons. And sigma equals 0.003. And this one is calling for sigma square, so you do the square of 0.003. This one be not equals to, no, this one will be less than. Okay, so 21.031, 21.03. And it also had the p-value over there, 0.176. And the p-value is bigger than 0.1. 0.176 is bigger than 0.1. Level of significance. So then you do not reject the null, and when you do not reject the null, there is not evidence.